G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Aussie Starcraft, where today it's Jin Air Green Wings madness in this team kill match from the Red Bull Battlegrounds at DC just the other week. In the top left hand corner is our Red Protoss player. We have Trap in the bottom right hand corner. We have sOs. Now for those of you unfamiliar with these players, Jin Air's Trap is one of the great Protoss players in the GSL at the moment. Has done quite well this year, particularly well in his performance at MLG Anaheim, where he managed to take out that tournament, the first Premier Tournament win of his career. Now sOs, I think everyone quite familiar with, certainly one of my favourite Protoss players on the scene at the moment, known for his cheeky and somewhat cheesy play from time to time. sOs has won not only the global finals last year, but IEM World Championships as well, so netting himself $200,000 prize pools. Certainly one of the cheeky Protoss players to watch out for, and hey, in a PvP this is going to be an incredible matchup. So obviously Trap and sOs are very familiar with each other's playstyle, and I find that these team kill matches bring out some of the interesting mind games that you won't always see in a traditional matchup. For example, these two players train against each other regularly and will be familiar with a lot of each other's PvP openings. Of course, the map is Sejong Station, which does give plenty of avenues for cheeky opening. Things like two-gate proxies, not always that common, but things like proxied stargates out along the extremities of the map, always a very clear and present danger. So curious to see how both Trap and sOs elect to open this game. Both of them actually going for quite quick gas. We see 2 gas from both our players. It'll be interesting to see if they go for 4 probes or 6. Looks like sOs is going to be opening up with 6 here, so likely we'll see sOs go for either a Stargate or perhaps some early Templar tech. Trap seeming to be quite content on the 5 gas at the moment. Whether that's a misclick or intentional, we will see. Cybercore's coming up now for both our players. We see Trap moving out to scout. This is about the time most Protoss players will scout in a PvP, unless of course it's one of the larger maps and they're looking for their opponent early on. In a 1v1 map, you tend to scout out as your Cybercore is coming up, and that allows you to see what your opponent's tech choice is. sOs already starting early with the mind games. Going to throw his pylon down the back right hand corner. That'll make it just a little bit more difficult for Trap to scout later on, as there's lots of opportunities for those crucial tech buildings to be hidden at the extremities of the base. So it makes it a bit harder for the Mothership Core, also makes it a little bit harder for sneaky probes to try and get an idea what's going on. Mothership Core for sOs going to force that probe away very quickly and ensure that sOs can throw down his tech building without the prying eyes of Trap identifying what's going on. I have 150 gas coming up now. Curious to see if sOs does throw down a Stargate. He does tend to enjoy using those oracles, and I gotta say I'm a fan of them as well. Looks like he'll actually go for the Nexus first, so interesting choice there. We'll be saving the gas for a little while. Trap on the other hand is chrono boosting Stalkers out of both his gateways, so we're going to have a very quick early Stalker pressure from Trap. This will put a lot of pressure on sOs, as we have 2 Stalkers already out on the map, third one on the way as well. That warp gate not going to be too far away. It's relatively equal for both our players, so this expansion for sOs will come under fire very quickly. Stalkers moving out across the map, already 3 on the field for Trap, only 1 for sOs. So sOs may well be forced to fall back and abandon that position. Going to get a sentry in play, and interesting choice of a hallucination. Means he won't be able to force field off the ramp. Oh, second sentry means he will actually be able to hold those Stalkers down on the low ground. As we see them move up, start to threaten this base. Could force the cancel on sOs' base, but Trap, knowing not to fall for the bait, he's going to force his way into the main base and force a photon overcharge out of sOs anytime. Now sOs got to be careful with that Mothership Core. If he loses that, he may well just lose the game. Photon overcharge coming down now. Going to force the Stalkers back out into the natural expansion, but the Nexus has finished up. It's going to be a very expensive paperweight there for sOs, as it will be taken out by this increasing Stalker pressure. More Stalkers moving up now. We have 6 Stalkers on the way. Blink actually coming up now. The Twilight Council of Trap, and Trap looking at getting very early lead in this game. We have an Oracle moving out across the right hand side of the map. Void Ray follow up from SOS. Love this choice. It's going to be essential to nail that Stalker count that's just flying. And Trap here with a slight build order advantage. Blink often considered to be the counter to early Stargate tech, whereas the Robo counters the Twilight. So SOS will be struggling in the early stage of this game. There's Oracle moving in now. It's going to force a Photon Overcharge. There are some sentries here that can be picked up, but SOS focus firing the probes. Love that choice. Going to get 3 quick kills there, so not quite as much as he'd like to have had, but not a bad effort considering he did force out both the Photon Overcharge and have those sentries there in the expansion. So SOS could potentially pick off this probe down here that is about to establish the Nexus. Would love to get it before it throws it down. Unfortunately, Trap just a little bit quick on the trigger there. So unfortunate for SOS. Delaying that expansion would have been very nice, as SOS own expansion well and truly delayed here. But SOS just trying desperately to catch up. Knows he is behind that Twilight tech of Trap. Has been on the field for quite some time. Needs his own blink, as Traps is about to finish up. If he gets any high ground vision here whatsoever, could be absolutely catastrophic for SOS. So SOS's Void Ray very important if the mothership core of Trap was to make its way across the field. It would be necessary to push that back. Otherwise, blink onto the high ground, and life will get very difficult very quickly for SOS. Of course, Trap's expansion almost complete now. It's going to give him the edge in this game. The Oracle, however, still roaming around, picking up kills here and there. SOS has got a proxy pylon, so can counter-attack if Trap isn't too careful. Trap going to pull back here as he realises the Stalker count for SOS is continuing to grow. Trap will manage to disengage just in time and be back in position to defend his natural expansion. So overall, great positioning from Trap early on in this game, showing a very keen awareness of the PvP matchup, ensuring his timings are absolutely on the money. If we check out the workers lost, it is 5 kills for SOS to none of Trap, but Trap on the other hand has managed to secure his natural expansion well and truly ahead of SOS, who's just throwing his down right now. So about 60 seconds of mining time and double probe production for Trap is going to give him a little bit of an income advantage. We can see, however, that SOS continued building workers in spite of the fact he hasn't actually got his natural expansion up yet. It's better to oversaturate your main or even long distance mine, as the case might be, so that you don't fall too far behind in the worker count. Forge is coming up for both our players now, along with a robo facility from Trap. So Trap going to fill out the tech tree. No Stargate present for Trap just yet, but option to go either Twilight tech tree or the Robo tech tree gives him that little bit more flexibility. As we were chatting about earlier, for players that may not be as familiar, when it comes to the PvP matchup, you've got 3 tech choices. You've got the Twilight, you've got the Robo, and you've got the Stargate. And when people go Twilight and Blink play, hard countered by Immortals, as they do so much damage so quickly, they can just focus fire him down. That Scout's going to make its way through the main base. So you've got the Robo that counters the Twilight. The Twilight, of course, counters the Stargate, because lots of Blink Stalkers and positioning will kill either Phoenix Oracles or, in limited numbers, Void Rays. And then, of course, you have it go in a circle. So Robo will beat Twilight, which will beat Stargate, and Stargate, of course, will beat Robo, as none of the Robo units actually shoot skyward. Now we have SOS actually getting in position using this Oracle. This is one of the reasons it's so important to keep these Oracles alive. They can provide high ground vision, but SOS going to blink up onto the Stalker. Oh, last shot manages to clean up that Oracle, which is unfortunate, as that Oracle providing all the high ground vision for SOS. Going to need an Observer or a Mothership core. I imagine we'll see an Observer produced. Should he actually get a Robo on the field? So I thought SOS had built a Robo. No, it looks like High Templar going to be the choice. Most likely to grab Archons off of those. You don't often see Storm utilised in a PvP. From time to time you will, or you'll see it. You see them used for those cheap Archons. Storm drops uncommon, but we're in fashion for a little bit, particularly against Terran players. But most of all, when you see the High Templar hit the field, it is indeed for those Archons. Archon's great at tanking damage and dealing out a lot of damage to Zealots, so very useful obviously in the matchup, as Zealots tend to tank for the more important gas heavy units, things like the Immortals, Archons and the Colossi. It looks like a robo coming down now for SOS third base as well on the way, whereas Trap, having delayed his third base, is a lot more unit heavy at this point in time. 107 supply, 296, certainly as the army supply here. Only one Immortal on the field so far. Oh, sorry, 3 Immortals on the field so far, with another one on the way. Trap's army has quite a lot of punch here, whereas singular Archon and lots of Stalkers here. Compositionally, SOS will struggle here for the moment, but lots of options to counter the Immortals. Considering it is such a heavy Immortal Stalker army from Trap, good options as long as the Archon count remains low. Charge lots can do a lot of damage, and I believe SOS has already picked up the charge tech. Indeed he has, so they can be used, but once the Archon count rises or the Colossi count, those Zealots do become a little bit of a paperweight, so got to be careful. But both our players juggling to get the best composition they can. And interesting that Archon actually going into the Warp Prism, so a little bit of a scary drop. If that gets into the main base of SOS, the Archon or Zealots could do a lot of damage to this mineral line, and actually a little bit difficult based on SOS's base design to actually hold this off. This is a Warp Prism, indeed it is. Natural Expansion is defended, but I could see this Warp Prism doing a lot of damage in the main of SOS. Trap jockeying for position in the middle of the map. We have SOS at the top of the ramp, but a little bit concerned that SOS army can actually defend this. Nice pick off of one Stalker there. Force field's actually going to work against Trap there, but this Archon's coming down in the main now. Warp in of Zealots could be very dangerous here. Zealot's going to be in the mineral line in a matter of seconds. We have that work against Stone Equalize. SOS counter warp in here, and the Archon actually manages to get focused down by the cannon and those Zealots. So Warp Prism going to die to the Void Ray, and Trap going to swing in here into the third base. Got to be careful though, as the Archon count for SOS starting to climb quite rapidly. It is 2 to 5. So SOS will absolutely carve through this these Zealot forces. Trap going to be forced to fall back here, and both players going to consolidate their numbers. Only Robo on the field at the moment. Both players grabbing those robotics bays to ensure that they can produce Colossi in due course. Archon count continuing to rise for both players here, as Trap continues to try and get position on SOS. Nice time off there, going to allow him to pick off an Archon. These charge lots falling just short of cleaning up that Stalker as well. And looks like Trap is starting to get a little bit of an upper hand here in the positioning of this game. Both players about to start producing Colossi. Be surprised if we don't see SOS go for either some Tempest here to counter the Colossi, or throw down a second Robo to really get ahead in the count. Indeed, he will go for that option. SOS has great composition awareness in his PvP, knows what he needs to get ahead, and in this case, based on the fact that he knows Trap hasn't built a Stargate yet, the options for Trap to counter are only Colossi. He has no access to the Tempest just yet, Tempest being the other very hard counter to Colossi. So SOS, very smart move. Throwing down a second Robo means double Colossus production, which means he'll pull ahead in the composition game very quickly. SOS positioning behind the natural expansion, love this. Got a lot of options here. You can try and barrel down these rocks. Though nice position of the cannon and main army for Trap is going to make it hard for SOS to push up, as we can see those Stalkers getting into position for another blink in the main. They could do a lot of damage to the production line, and certainly inhibit gas mining for a little bit. SOS not going to be able to fight up this ramp. Uphill into the Colossi and Archons of Trap will result in lots of his units dying, but big blink into the main, going to focus down this cannon very quickly. 3 volleys and it will go down. Now these probes are going to start to die very quickly. Have another 4, 5 probes going down. 6 probes have gone down. This Colossus potentially could get blinked on if it's not careful, but it appears SOS is busy microing his army. A little bit of blink micro here, going to clean up some Stalkers, but these Stalkers will all eventually go down as the Immortals make their way into that main base, and they do get cleaned up very hard. SOS falling back here, clean up a Zealot or two as he continues to jockey around the map, but Trap here focused on his macro, going to continue to produce lots of units at home. Out on the map, we see that sOs hasn't got any of his Colossus, so is it a composition disadvantage? Going to pull back, and it's actually going to lull Trap into a little bit of a false sense of security. Thinks he can push out here, but what he isn't aware of is sOs has 3 Colossi at home, baby, and 2 more ready to pop, so 5 Colossus is a certain advantage, and sOs was just happily trading those Stalkers away against the probes. These Zealots here, same deal. sOs wanting to trade these away, but not for no benefit at all. Unfortunately, caught between a rock and a hard place. Archon's going to clean those up in seconds. The 4th base of sOs could well fall here as Trap advances. sOs army a little bit out of position here. 5 Colossi, a lot of damage, but not enough meat in front of this just yet. So got to be careful about engaging. These Zealots do melt so quickly. The Colossi and the Archon's just going to burn through those. Unfortunately, if sOs still have those Zealots, they could be threatening and cancelling this 4th base. sOs going to be down on the income game for a little while now. He's been on 3 bases for quite some time. His main base is mined out. Natural expansion going to start mining out the next 2 or 3 minutes, leaving only this 3rd base, so needing to establish a 4th. He's going to take it in a forward location. Like this, a bit of a bold choice, but we have a Dark Shrine actually just finishing up now for Trap. And where is that Dark Shrine? Where has that been built? Actually built at the 3rd base. A little bit of a gamble there, but I like the choice from Trap, hiding it away from sOs here. Could well give him quite a nasty advantage. We have a Warp Prism moving out. If I was a betting man, I'd say that's for some Dark Templar shenanigans. Perhaps in this mineral line or in the main, they could absolutely run amok. We'll see how Trap chooses to use those. Already has 3 of them in the Warp Prism, so it's a very dangerous play, particularly when the economy of sOs is already so limited. Needs to be very careful. These Zealots still running rampant around the side of the field, trying to get an angle on this natural expansion, but Trap's army positioning has been impeccable. These Archons trying to focus down the Nexus, but Trap is now in position. 7 Colossi now is going to go crazy, but sOs could be forced back. Those Dark Templars going to work in his main, but we will not take our eyes off this engagement. Mass recall is going to pull him back, but mass recalling into the Dark Templar have now cleaned up that photon cannon. There's no detection here, and this Colossi could actually die to the Dark Templar. Chasing it down, Dark Templar going to work. Archon's dying here. Immortal could go down as well. There's so much damage from the DGs. The Observer finally pops. That's a lot of supply damage on sOs's very expensive units getting picked off there. Colossi count down to 5. Lots of Archons being cleaned up, and Trap now barreling across the field. He has the Immortals, he has the Archons, and knows he has an army supply lead. About 40 supply lead on sOs. This could be it. If Trap engages well here, sOs could be in massive trouble. We have the Immortals just about ready to finish up. 2 more Archons popping. sOs going to have to position himself perfectly, and the Mothership Core going down too early in that conflict, not getting out any use of its ability. sOs picked a nice angle here as he pulls back into his neat little niche. A warp in here is going to go straight into the main army of Trap against those Immortals. These Colossi doing so much damage. Even the Photon Cannon lending a bit of a hand here as the Zealots manage to get on top of the retreating armies. Archon's going to be picked off. There's no more meat left. Few hallucinated Immortals here. I love that choice from Trap. They're doing no damage themselves. Colossi, War of the Worlds here as 5v5 these Colossus go to town. Colossi so low here. We have Mothership Core almost dying. 5th Colossi does finally get picked off, but Trap's Mothership Core, it's fearless, baby, sitting on top of the Colossi, plugging away as best he can as the army falls back. And nice hold from sOs. Still 30 army supply down. Those a nice feedback there from sOs. Gonna kill off the Mothership Core. Another one in production for Trap immediately. But Trap here is starting to pull ahead. The 4th base starting to mine now. 4th base of sOs still not up or in play anywhere on the field. It's been cleaned up twice by Trap, and Trap showing why he has such devastating PvP, an intimate understanding of the timings, when to attack, when he can threaten those bases, and some great timings of his harassment. Things like those Dark Templar, very much delayed, enemy not expecting them at 20 minutes into the game, and unfortunately for sOs, he had a great timing for the push on Trap's 4th, but forced to disengage by that nice time warp, and actually mass recalling into the Dark Templar himself, meaning that he fell further and further behind. But sOs using the map to his advantage, going to force the evacuation of this 4th base. However, we have a big Zealot warp in on the main. We have a defensive Dark Templar from sOs, but is it going to be enough? We have the 3rd base going down. It's going to form a base race scenario here. If sOs isn't careful, it looks like his army may get caught out on this side of the field. No mass recall available, no mothership core at all. sOs a very dangerous position here, playing chicken with trap as he positions himself between 2 bases. His own 3rd base is dying. There is literally nothing in the way of reinforcements for sOs. Observer going to take up position above the Archons, die very quickly, but Trap going to move out and spring one on sOs here as the Trap literally falls in here on sOs. Colossi trying to micro back as quick he can, but sOs knows it's GG and taps out of the game. We see the 3rd base cleaned up there during the engagement. Just what an impeccable victory of Trap, managing to beat last year's Global Finals champion as well as the champion of IEM, showing Trap has some of the best PvP in the world. We won't cast the 2nd game of this series, but suffice it to say that Trap managed to improve his lead in that game, and just showing why his PvP is such top notch in this game. Sorry, a little bit tongue tied after a 30-minute PvP, but really happy for Trap managing to win one over on sOs in this game. sOs, one of my favourite Protoss players, but nice to see Trap upset him at his own game. PvP, certainly one of sOs' best matchup. Hope you guys have enjoyed this game. We have so much StarCraft over the weekend, lots happening here on the channel, and lots on the WCS stage as we have all of the regional finals finishing up in the next 24 hours, so don't miss those, guys. Hope you enjoy them. This is Aussie StarCraft, and I'll catch you in the next cast. Thanks, guys.